All right, we're back again. Jonathan Brazer here, and I have the pleasure to have on the other line with me Reese Thompson. Reese is a gentleman that's a coach that I get to interview. I'm lucky to have this job in that I get to interview the best coaches in the world and extract from them how to be a better coach myself. And so if you're somebody looking for a coach, these are things that you might be wanting to look into. But let me tell you what I know about Reese. First of all, how long do you think we've known each other, Reese?
2 years, somewhere in there.
Is that all? Seems like more. I would have said 4. So, but 2 to 4, someplace in that range. There's been a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of growth between us in there. And a couple little things about your backstory is as I met you, you're an engineer, and you're an engineer in the metals industry. I think that you went to school in Colorado and studied metal, and then got an MBA at Carnegie Mellon University, and went on to work in a metal factory that does. When I met you, at least, you're producing products, I guess, for the aircraft industry, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Aerospace, titanium. That was where I was at.
So you also married man, beautiful wife Ashley, and I don't know how I got to see the feed, but I saw some of you guys' pictures, like a collage or something. I don't know, but it was really cute seeing you guys young. I was checking out your Facebook. I was trying to go out there and see, what more information I could gather that I didn't already know on you. And interesting enough, I mean, you got such a baby face in these pictures, man. That beard does you justice. But you live in Ohio, right? You're from Colorado, but you live in Ohio, and you worked at that factory, but you don't anymore, right?
Right.
You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing is a little bit of an interesting story, right? Because we all have these influences in our lives that every little thing just stacks up and influences not only where we are physically, but who it is that we become in the world. And for me, like, I just really liked hunting and shooting growing up. So I wanted to be a gunsmith. That was my thing when I was in high school. Like, all right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to become a gunsmith. But I was doing really well in school. Like, I was valedictorian in my high school class, and but my dad, he kind of knew it. He could see those things that I couldn't yet, and he's like, why don't you go do something that makes you a little bit more money? So, okay, so I start looking around and I see, okay, I can go into engineering. And
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. But I saw, all right, if I go into metallurgy, I can still go into like some like gunsmithing, I can still go into making guns. So I go into that, and I'm getting into the program and kind of realize, like, oh, well, all the jobs for this are in steel for metallurgists, unless you kind of get into this real special track or you go on into academia or whatever. But academia wasn't my thing, even though I still did really well in college. I just wasn't my thing. So I was set on, all right, I'm going to go make as much money as I can. That was my thing. In fact, our dean of our department, he had a class with us kind of as we started into our specialty in the metallurgy, and he went around the class and asked everybody what they wanted to do. And everybody said, I want to develop this, I want to search this. But when it got to me, I stood up and I'm like, I just want to make as much money as I can, and that was it. So that was where my focus was. And I'm pretty sure that came out. I was probably one of the highest paid people in my starting position. It was really well for engineers starting out. So I went into that, and I was really stuck on Robert Kiyosaki. I'd read his book during one of my internships in Rich Dad Poor Dad, and one of the things in there, one of his lessons was to keep learning, right? So somewhere the bug got planted in my brain that if I went and got an MBA, I would be able to make more money that would then fuel this whole real estate thing. I could just plug the money from making so much money from progressing up the corporate ladder, making so much money from that I could just plug it into real estate, and someday I'd be able to retire early and go live this amazing life. So, oh, cool. Okay, cool. So I started into my MBA program. Ended up switching companies along the way. That's where I got into titanium. And I come out of that program, I finish that up, and I get into this management position. It opened up right after I graduated college, and they interviewed me, and I was accepted into it. And I think I was 26. I was 26 at the time. So by society standards, at that point in my life, I'm 26. I have an engineering degree. I have an MBA, and I just got a 6-figure salary. And in the Midwest, like, that's phenomenal. That by most people's definitions, that's success. And it all, to me, I think, kind of was still playing off of this point of my dad was whispering in my ear that, hey, why don't you go do something that makes you a little more money? That I was still playing off of that. And so I'm doing that. That's, if you look at my life, that's the way it is. But there's this other side of it there that this journey doesn't speak out. That's what everybody looking from the outside in would see, is a 26-year-old getting a 6-figure salary. Like, okay, that's pretty impressive. But what they don't see is the amount of stress that it generates, like the strain that can put on your relationships or your health, because you put all of these things aside when that happens. Or you're, even worse, your faith, you start like dropping off those sorts of things. So I'm striving to do well. I'm just allowing the stress to happen, allowing these outside influences within the job, the upper management or the expectations or my own expectations, to really just stack up on top of it. But it's because I'm allowing that to happen, because it's still giving me this image of success in there. And so I
golden handcuffs, right?
Right. You could get these other things, but you'd have to give up that image with it. So I got another promotion in there within that. It was kind of a lateral promotion kind of thing. And that position, so that would have been when I was 27, and I was in charge of 200 people. I was overseeing a department of 200 people, and I had probably an operating expense budget of about $36 million a year.
You can't live on that, but it's a good start.
Well, I was thinking yesterday, because somebody mentioned, how can you earn $100,000 a day? I was like, man, that operating expense budget of $36 million a year, that's spending $100,000 a day. Like, wow. That's a different level of stress in there when you're in charge of that, and you're responsible for that. And that then kind of turned the corner and opened up some other problems in my life. So I was going along, and had this spot show up on my toe one day. I had some back issues. I'd kind of thrown my back out, and I was seeing a couple different doctors for that. And the one doctor, because you're in your mid-20s, you don't really have a doctor yet. At least you probably shouldn't. So I had this one doctor so that I could be seen for some more back issues. And he says, "Oh, do you have anything else?" I said, "Well, I got this spot on my toe." So he looks at it and he's like, "Oh, I think it's a cyst. What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, let's just wait 30 days. If it doesn't change or something, then maybe we'll see somebody about getting it cut out." Well, 3 days later, that thing infested up so much that I was back in the doctor's office saying, "Cut this thing out. Something's wrong here." So foot doctor cuts it out. He sends it off for biopsy. He'd cut out a little cartilage pack out of it. Is what it looked like. It was about the size of a pea, I would say, maybe a snap pea. And he sent it off for biopsy. He thought it was a granuloma, is what he thought it was, that I'd stepped on something and my body walled it off just to kind of protect it. That was an immune response. But
it was on the bottom?
It was on the bottom, kind of between the pad of my toe and the ball of my foot. So First place they send it to, well, we don't really know what it is, so they send it to another place. Well, you know what? This kind of looks like lymphoma, but we're not really sure. So they sent it off to a lymphoma specialty place, and they said, well, it kind of has some markers saying it is, some markers saying it's not. So they send it off to a genetic testing place, and they come back and they say, yeah, absolutely, it's cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. And so
What's the other word for that?
I'm sorry?
What's the other word for that?
Cancer.
So how old are you at that point?
I was 27.
I was 27. Doc says, man, the C word to you. Fine. After all those tests, how do you feel?
Man, at first it was kind of surreal. Like, it was almost like a third party kind of thing. Like that was happening to me, but it wasn't me. Like I'm not a person with cancer. It was kind of the way that I took it. It was kind of weird, almost like I'm observing this happening. Not that it's happening to me, not that I'm partaking in it. I'm observing, even though it's part of my body and whatnot. I'm watching this as kind of the way it is. So I don't know if that was just a lack of being able to accept it or realize it or whatever at that point, but it was a very interesting take at that point, because at 27 years old, you don't really think that you're going to be the one to have cancer.
I want to dig in here for a second, because had you had an experience ever like that you're describing in your life? Was there ever like what you're describing, like you lifted up out of the dust cloud, you're looking down on it? You didn't necessarily say it all like that, but that's what I'm picturing.
I'd had some heart issues in high school where my heart would just race like I remember walking up to my basketball coach one time because I'm like out of breath a little bit, and I can feel my heart like racing, doing its thing, and he feels my pulse, and his response was, "Holy shit!" But it was like a regular heartbeat. It was just extremely fast. So they did all kinds of other heart stuff, but it kind of put a little bit of fear into you at that time that, hey, you're immortal. You still have issues that can happen. You're not invincible in this world. So as far as like a mortality kind of thing, that was the closest I'd faced, but not to the extent of the cancer, of where it was like, this is something that's out of my control. Like there's things I can do, there's things that I can control, but whether or not I actually have cancer is not in my control. And so the fact that I had that was like, whoa, something else is going on here.
So did you figure out what that other thing was?
Well,
or you have a suspicion at least, right?
The best I can do at this point is look back. I'll never say for sure whether something happened or not. I think that there was some chemical exposure when I was growing up. I grew up on a farm, so all kinds of different chemicals we used on the farm. And I think some of the chemical exposure created the mutations in the genes to enable that to develop, because it takes time for that sort of exposure to that type of cancer to develop. But the reason I was given the backstory of where I was going with my career and the success that I was having was that amount of stress, what I've learned since then, and looking back, hindsight 2020, is that stress is one of the things that is most prominent in cancer development and cancer coming to the light. So I think this is my theory on it, is that that chemical exposure caused those genes to start reacting in the way they were, and then getting into that stress, chasing that messed up view I had on the way I should do things, that the stress just enabled that to manifest, like just all come together and come out into, here's a little tumor.
Gotcha. All right, so we know, we have a suspicion then of where this came from, but where'd it go? Well, what's the deal? Catch us up.
Well, so they cut it out, went through radiation. I can't remember, 18 rounds of radiation or something, all on my toe. So it turned out to be as good of, if I was ever going to get cancer, that was the way to have it. Just the radiation wasn't bad. It was on my toe, a little bit of walking funny for a little while or whatever, but that was no big deal. They did all kinds of other tests to check to see, is it anywhere else in my body or is it not? And it wasn't. I mean, the whole time I'm kind of freaking out because I had swollen lymph nodes and different things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a lymphoma. It could be in my lymphatic system, and if it gets in my lymphatic system, then it's like stage 3 or stage 4. Mine was like, from what I could tell, stage 2, but doctors never really would say anything related to that. So I'm freaking out the whole time, but in the real scheme of things, if I was able to get out of just where I was in this rabbit hole, that everything was fine. Everything was okay. I was perfectly healthy otherwise. It was just all a mental game.
So I just want to be clear and make clear for the audience. So you got in a round, 13 rounds it sounds like. You went face to face with the C word and you beat it, right? You're free. You're cancer free, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Let's celebrate that with you. All right.
Thanks.
Now help me with this evolution, man. Then what was it that, interested you in coaching? Like, how are we here in this conversation now then?
Well, it's funny because we just kind of came out of this event this last weekend. I've always been a big fan of personal development, and I signed up for coaching a few years ago, and man, I'm lucky. That was probably one of the biggest blessings out of this, was that I did already have coaching in my pocket. I was already had coaches to go through to help give me the insight, coaches that had cancer and been able to talk me through, like, okay, yeah, here's the physical side of it, and the medical side of what's going on. Here's the mental side, the mental game, and I know what you're battling here, and here's the things you can do to help and help get you through that game. And seeing that all come to light and how that played and kind of the aftershocks of the cancer too, of like, oh my gosh, I got a rash, I'm freaking out again. So all those sorts of things that I realized now looking back that this view that I had on the world of what success was and what I needed to do to purvey that, and just trying to get that image of success, was what caused my health issues to kind of blow up bigger than they should have been otherwise. So in order to, if I'm going to have any impact on that, now that I see that, now that I have that knowledge, I have a responsibility to go out and help others avoid that same fate, avoid a worse fate than what I had. Because so where the responsibility comes from, I think, it's 2 words, right? Responsibility is, this event happened and I can respond in a way, and I have an ability to do that response. So with that response comes the ability, and now I have this responsibility to go out and make others, because there's so many high achievers, right? I was on our company's HIPO list, is what they call it, or HIPOTS and other companies. High potentials is what that stands for. People who they've deemed are people who can go on and become future leaders of our company, and we need to pour more into them and help them develop and help their career path, kind of thing. And there's so many people like that are these HIPOs that are just on this same path that I had, but they're killing themselves for it. Mm-hmm. They're not doing it in a way that both jives with them or jives with their health and community or things. They sacrifice their morals to go on after these views of success, when in reality, if they were to turn that around and look inward at themselves and what they want and the impact that they want to have on the world and the different things that light them up and bring them joy, that if they were to take all of that potential, that high potential that they have, and focus it in on that, it will exponentially magnify their ability to impact the world and all the things that we interact with. So that's my goal. That's what's driving me forward in coaching is how can I reach these people who have so much more potential than what they're living up to. That, yeah, they may be successful in society's standards, but they're playing small and they're lying to themselves about it because they do have so much more that they are able to do.
Cool, cool. So you want to help people that were like you to get to where you are faster, to get their mindset right, to beat their cancers or whatever challenges that they're facing, it sounds like. And so that's, you got some passion for that, and somebody helped you through it, right? And now that's what you want to do for somebody else, is get their head right, the mind game. There's a physical side and a mental side. So I got to ask, what kind of vision, what is your vision for your coaching program? What's that look like?
Yeah. So my vision is that I have this like team, so to speak, of coaching students that are able to come together, and they bring in these issues and these goals and these dreams and their visions of what they want to do in the world. And because it is all these people who are already a step above, that we know when we get into a mastermind we can do great things. But if we can take that and level it up a notch with these people, how much more would they be able to do with a mastermind, and what kind of impacts can they do in the world? That, all right, we haven't solved we haven't beat cancer yet at its core. How could we get a team like that together that is able to do that, or end world hunger, or solve the education crisis around the world, whatever it is that lights them up individually, because we get a team of people together that are able to bring that kind of brain power and that energy into that sort of a room, that will do things that this world has never seen.
So you're talking about impact, and your impact on somebody, them going on to have impact in the world. And I've had a student myself that alluded to that. That's called the spider web to them, the spider web effect. And, she had been a student who went on and did some healing on a mission trip, like laid hands on people and overcame some things, and stood in front of an audience and of 10,000. And that's not in her personality before, And so, but just to tell you about that impact, is I've got to feel that before, is what I want you to know. Is she called me after that event and said I was a factor. And she said more than that, but I'll only receive that I may have been a factor in that she got to be able to do that. Might have helped her have the right sentence, helped her have the right mindset at a time. But she gave me some credit for her touch. And I think that's what you're talking about, is you want to feel that. You want to feel that impact on somebody that you didn't even lay your own hands on, right? You want to see it grow.
Because there's only so much impact that I can directly have. I can go out and I can put all my effort and have the biggest impact the world's ever seen as far as cancer goes. But I'm not going to be able to, if I do that, I'm not going to be able to end world hunger at the same time. But if I were to focus on helping out the people who are able to have that sort of impact, somebody on cancer, somebody on hunger, somebody on education, then I am able to influence and drive and be that spark that ignites the fire that goes and solves those sorts of issues.
So, speaking of influence, you just reminded me something that I hadn't talked about you yet. And can you tell us about Reese on the range and how he was born?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a passion project, I guess you'd say, of mine. And that's kind of where some of this mindset around my coaching has developed, is that when and you connect with what it is that you really like and the things that light you up, you get just a different sort of energy about you. Like things come easier. Your emotions are in a different place. It's not from a grind anymore, but it's dragging you, it's pulling you to it just because you enjoy doing it so much. And that hunting and outdoors and shooting sports that I alluded to at the beginning that I like so much, that was something that I was putting to the side when I was on this quest for success. But I was like, man, I'd really like to do that again. So I started up a YouTube channel called Reese on the Range. And actually, I'd started it a long time ago to try to kick the spark off, but I just never really did anything with it. But about 6 or 7 months ago, I decided to get serious about it and start putting some videos out there. Just try it, see what happens. And so I did. And it's been wonderful to have like a little bit of that responsibility of I need to do something intentionally to make it happen, but it's fun for me to do along the way. So it gives me that little bit of accountability for like built into it. That's a lot of fun. But I'm focusing the Reese on the Range around shooting sports and trying to really change the direction of the industry to bring new technology and allow easier access to new shooters and take out some of the confusion that they have around it so that it can become more of a mainstream type of sport again, because it just gets attacked from so many different things politically or policy wise or different things that it can make the sport pretty difficult. But I think that it has the room to be a lot more than what it is.
Well, I'll tell you that it's had an effect on me as I was, I'm blessed enough to get to hang out with you regularly. And we were at an event earlier this year that happened to be here in St. Louis. You came to visit. And when you did, you brought some guns with you, didn't you? Want to tell us about that? Want to tell us about what we did?
Yeah. So Jonathan had a little space there where we could shoot some guns. And so I brought one of them with me, and I picked up some tannerite with me. All right, while I was there, I picked some up. And so tannerite it's a couple substances that by themselves they're inert. There's no issues. You can transport them, mess around with them all you want, and they'll be fine. But you mix them together, and they become explosive. So I picked some of that up, and we took it down into this little spot, and we found a rock. And I was just going to try to shoot, like the way the package was designed, you could shoot, like mix it up into 10 different things.
Was it a rock, Reese? Was it a rock, or was it like a boulder?
Well, so that's where I was getting to, is that those 10 little bags that were supposed to be in there to separate those 10 little things, they weren't there. So what do? You just use the one big bag. So we found a boulder. It had this little hole drilled into it from quarry operations, and we shoved this 10 times now explosive of what it was originally supposed to be, and we shoved it into this boulder. We stepped back to the other side of the quarry, and we shot it. And this boulder just exploded. Like it disappeared. You walk up after the smoke cleared, because there was so much smoke and dust from the explosion, kind of let that go by, and that boulder was gone. There was nothing left of it.
I called it. It turned into Reese's Pieces. You made it into Reese's Pieces. So, all right. Well, listen, man. So, who has been an influential coach in your life? Talk about who's had an effect on you.
Well, so we have a little bit of the direct coaches and the indirect coaches, right? Kind of the mentors that they get to communicate with, and the ones we don't. And so I guess first on the ones that don't, it's kind of more maybe the ones that are arm's reach away that you're not able to directly interact with. So for me, that's like Andrew Carnegie. He's probably been one of the biggest ones. Being a metallurgist and steel, and him kind of being the spark for the steel industry, that I really liked his approach to industry and changing the world because of his focus and what he wanted to do. So just trying to learn more and more about him and his philosophy and what he did. So that's it's kind of one of those. He's dead, so I can't talk to him. He can't coach me directly. But I've had a few different coaches now. Um, so I had JP Moses, Chris Hake. They were my first two coaches, and then now Jonathan and Erica and uh, Chuck Bauman. They're my coaches currently, and it just the change in my life from before making the commitment to coaching, like because once you jump into coaching, it's a whole different level. You've now actually like put money on the table to I'm making a change in my life. There's no more someday. I'm making this happen. So when you commit to that and then you're teamed up with people who've already been there or they can see things that you can't, and they're that third party. It's not like your spouse or your friend or your mom or your dad who love you so much that they can't tell you the hard things. That these guys, they love you so much that they do tell you the hard things. It's just it's hard to put to words that change in your life at that point.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I'm glad to be on that list, man. And I can tell you that it's been a joy, anything that I got to do with you. Getting into things, I would like to know, what would you call your style? What is your leadership style or your coaching style? And I'll just tell you, for me, like, and I, as a coach, I think I'm kind of like a journeyman. I may stay a chapter ahead, but I kind of like to take people on journeys with me. And we've been on a few journeys. We're on some right now, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We just, like we said earlier, just finished up a journey from the weekend and we're going to be carrying that one out. So I'm excited to see how that one's going to go. As far as my style, so I would say it's kind of pertaining to my personality, and not that I have a bad personality, but where I'm going with that is there's a test called the predictive index. You've heard of DISC and Colby and some of these others, but the predictive index, I think, is probably one of the best personality insights as to what you can have. And that profile, the name of that profile is an analyzer. But that doesn't just mean that I just analyze things and it's what it is. It means that I take in the whole picture. What all is going on? What are all these different influences? Whether it's business wise, financially, relationship, health, spiritual. These are all different factors that we have in our lives that all play an influence into the results we're trying to get. So I take those in and we try to form the best solution. And this is part of the analyzer profile, is that come up with the best path forward for that quickly, and we drive hard to it. We have high expectations that things will get done and be done well to the best of our abilities, because we're not playing small here. We're playing to win, 100-0, right? So
being an analysis, or what you call it, be an analyzer, right? I would think that that's something where you have a little intuition for what you're seeking out. You have to have something. It's not just going out and doing research. It's actually sniffing something out when somebody's sharing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because some of those, like if you had business problems, you can probably look at, all right, well, where are your financials and what's your cash flow look like? Like yeah, that's kind of fun on a certain level, but it's boring compared to getting into somebody's emotional responses or their spiritual responses, because those are hard to measure unless you're hooked up to an EEG machine. It's going to be hard to pick up on that, but they'll leave in certain clues in what you're coming out or what you're holding back, the things that you're not saying, the things that you're avoiding saying. And when you can clue into those sort of things, then you can bring out a whole different aspect of what's holding you back, like your fears and your your fears. That's probably the root of most of it, is your fears. What are you afraid of? You can be afraid of a lot of things. You can be afraid of success. You can be afraid of failure. You can all these different fears start to come out. And if we can work at those fears and build that confidence into it with these good plans, that it's a lot easier to build a plan once you've gotten to it, because we've analyzed these emotions now, and we can go in and create a life that you've only dreamed of before.
So, I'm happy to get to work with you as well as be in business with you. But I would tell you that along the way, as I'm learning you as a client, as a student, one of the things you've brought to me is let's consider purchasing these businesses. You, at one time, when I first met you, you still had a corporate job. You weren't chasing your passions, or you weren't doing your passions like you are. I don't even like to use that word, chasing. You're doing them. But you brought me plans, man. And I remember some of the first times I ever asked you, let me see those financials. Let me see those numbers. Why do you want to do this? What makes you think this would be a successful move for you? And I'll tell you, we were looking at all kinds of things. Like, you're going to buy some Subways. I think we had 2 Subways pretty much under contract about, right?
Yeah, we did. We had a contract on it, and because that was going to be the thing that was going to catapult me out of my job at that point, right? I was, you can swing and hit base hits. This is analogy Joe and I do. You can do base hits. You can stack up enough base hits and you'll score, right? You can get rental property until you've replaced your income, or you can swing for a home run. And for me, I was swinging for a home run, and that was just going to be this one big deal that would be enough income to get me out of my job. And it was a great plan. Like, things were going to happen. It was going to do exactly what I wanted. It was right up my alley with the way I was managing. I had the skills from the background, my MBA and everything. But roadblocks kept coming up. These different denials and different problems that kept just peeking out of nowhere, and it was like, oh, that's strange. And finally, at the end, I'd gone through different sources of financing multiple times, and I got this. I had lined up everything as to what the bank had said was what they wanted before. So I checked all the boxes. They said, go do this, this, and this. So I did that, and I submit the application, and they deny it again. And I said, what in the world is going on here? So I told the people that I was trying to do the deal with, and some other stuff came out of it too, like some unwritten expectations for the way things would be done. So I started to think, like, maybe this is a good thing. But I planted in my brain. Ashley and I had talked, my wife and I had talked, and said, there's got to be a reason this fell through. There's got to be a reason why I didn't have this, because everything looked good on paper. And a couple of these things said, maybe there was some reasons why this wouldn't be so good. But we may never know the true reason why we didn't get to do this deal. And
I always find that when I'm in that dust cloud, that it's a real trick to try to find the silver lining when you're inside of it, when the chaos is going on around you. And I mean, that there's probably one for you. That whatever's happening is not happening to you, it's happening for you. There's a reason behind this. But man, when you've done the kind of homework that you did, the kind of work that you put into putting that plan together, the backstory, the homework, the research, I mean, you knew to the penny and how you could even affect the margins of a Subway. I mean, that's a business that people do. You're mature beyond your age. You're a very, very smart guy, man. And I think anybody who does work with you as a coach is going to get extreme value out of the way your mind works like that. But yeah, will you tell everybody how old you are?
I'm 29 currently.
Yeah, man. I mean, you don't think that. Like, yeah, when I hang out with you, and I don't ever feel like that you're young. Do you know what I mean? That you're as young as you are. So
another person in our group thought I was in my 40s. So
yeah, it's not because you look old. It's just your presence. I mean, you're knowledgeable, you're accomplished, and you you just don't come across as immature. Like, I know you got it in you. We're going to have some fun, but you really bring something to the table. So what do you think it is that makes you different than other coaches out there?
Man, that's a great question. It's like every coach is trying to extract out what is going to remove those walls of limiting beliefs. What's going to take their uh, student to the next level? What's holding their student back, kind of thing, and how can we work through that? That's what at least the good coaches should be doing. They shouldn't just be laying out a blueprint here, do this and this, helping the students find that, right? But what really separates me from them is I'm trying to take that to another level. Is that I not only do I think you can do what it is you're trying to do and getting you over your limiting beliefs, I think that every single person has untapped potential that you can tap into even beyond what you're after. And that's a bigger goal. That's a whole different mindset to get yourself around of this world is abundant. We can go do great things. How can we tap into your true potential and live in that life?
Humans have such potential, and it's unrealized in so many places by complacency. And having been at an event this weekend with you, getting to hang out with Tony Robbins, Dean Grazio, I always mess his name up, Graziosi, these players in the business, right? Something that kind of came out was from one of the ladies that spoke, and she said that that her goal wasn't to compete with anybody out there. That's one of the things she says. She says she don't really look at her competition. She's not here to compete with the competition. She's here to compete with the best version of herself that God intended. And I thought that was something. Like, if God had this plan for you, man, like, the David Goggins book, where he goes and, one day we all get to meet our maker, right? Depending on what your beliefs are, what happens. But there's a lot of people believe one day we're going to, answer for the things we did here. And what we made happen or what we didn't. And so right. David Goggins is talking about this, and he says he goes in front of, the Lord. He's at the gates, and he says, man, you fat slob, basically. I mean, I don't use my own word. You fat slob. You're supposed to be the pull-up champion of the world. You're supposed to, be able to accomplish all this stuff, and this is all you did with it. Man, you swept your talents under the rug, basically.
Right.
Well, what that woman did for me, I don't know about you, man, but I was like, dude, well, if he had you down for the pull-up champion of the world, I'm gonna be then the pull-up champion and a sit-up champion. Then, I want to be in competition with the guy that he thought was the best guy I could be. How about that? That was a reframe for me.
Yeah. I think it was Jamie Kern Lima, because I think that same phrase, I think I pulled that out and put it as a quote on Facebook, because that really impacted me too. That you don't even know how much potential you really have yet until you try to go live it.
You laid out your trek, your how you got into coaching, different groups that you've been in, meaning you've been experienced in multiple masterminds. You've worked under multiple coaches. You've got insight from them, and then you have your own coaching group. And I'll just ask you, like, in the experience that you've had, what's different amongst the groups? Like, how, or in particular, somebody that's looking at you as a coach, how's your culture made up in your group versus maybe one that you've been in? What's a culture to group?
So each group kind of takes on its own personality, but then the groups kind of evolve over time too, because when they're starting out, a lot of people are in the same situation, but then you'll get one person that they they have a breakthrough and they're like, everybody else sees this breakthrough and this success that they have, and all of a sudden everybody else is like, oh, hey, that's possible. It's kind of like Roger Bannister with the 4-minute mile. As soon as he broke it, everybody else could do it. So you kind of see that evolution in the groups too, and that's where my group is at currently. Is that they're kind of starting to see these breakthroughs, right? They're starting to see what's possible, but where that's going to go, from what I've seen with these other groups, is that it's going to just pull everybody else up. They're all going to start having these massive successes, and it'll get to a point where everybody in that group is now living that life that we only dreamed of, right? I've alluded to that a couple times, that you, it's just something you won't be able to experience on your own because of that mastermind, because you have that group, because you have those other people not only cheering, like looking for the help and helping you out kind of thing, but you're helping them out, and they've got this, they want to see you succeed, you're wanting to see them succeed, and that all comes together and meshes and just magnifies the results that everybody is able to have.
So, you use the word mastermind again here, and I will tell you that the first time I ever hear that word is from a book called Think and Grow Rich. Napoleon Hill has a concept of using a mastermind, and I'd have to ask you, since he set the tone, in my opinion, there's a lot of people out there that are masterminding, they call it, and what they do is they get together like once a year with random people, not people, the same people come back and everything like that. And to me, that's not really a mastermind. It's not people who are in your family, or that's kind of how we call it, or in your tribe, right? And who know you, who have actually read what you've written out your vision for your life to be, who hold you to it, who want sometimes more almost for you than you do, who care about you, who love you, and who smack you when you need to, who knock on your thick head sometimes and tell you. That's something that, even with some great tuition, I mean, we see the best coaches. We watch Tony Robbins do it over the weekend, pull somebody right off the stage. Maybe it was planted. Maybe he was, led by the energy right to that person. And he's able to, like, in a few sentences, uncover and get them back to talking about how they're supposed to be perfect for their mom. That's why their business, is failing. Takes them all the way back. But, and I forgot where I was going with that, Reese.
I mean, I'll say that there's many times
Tony.
they say the student exceeds the master, or however they word that, right? And that's the only place that this can go, is that my group, because I'm your student, is just gonna wipe out your students. I mean, it's just that simple. So join my group and you'll be better off than joining Jonathan's.
Hey, with that plug in there, you remember we talked about the chapter ahead, right? So I heard you say something about that and I think that's super valuable in a group. I'll tell you, as a student in a group, one of the biggest breakthroughs was my first mastermind, where I go, man, you were only in here for 4 months before me, and look what you accomplished, right? And so what you're saying is you're beginning to have those experiences in your group, and that's why it's going to accelerate. But I'll tell you that there's your guy in my group, right? And, you've seen plenty of those. And what we know is our belief going up is it just increases, and it's not going to be that we don't get set back, that the world doesn't send more stuff our way.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Well, so just for example, so you alluded to the spiderweb person earlier in the hands-on healing. That person that is healing, and this kind of comes back to your mess becomes your message thing we were talking about, where you have that responsibility. This is a person that couldn't leave the couch, watched Netflix all day. And now she's going out and changing people's lives, miraculous healings. She couldn't have done that without coaching. There's no way. She would still be wallowing in her own pity. I love her. I'm saying that from a loving place. She would have still been trying to get off of that couch. But with the coaching, no matter what group you're in, that's what the coaching can do for you, is you can go out and truly change people's lives.
Yeah, well, it's peeling people's onion, man. It's digging in and finding out their why. They want $1 million. Well, why? What is your significance? And it's that going the 7 layers deep, they say, and really uncovering, man, what it is that drives them, and then helping them to get to do that, helping them to form their own plan to do it. And you may have some great input in there, but really it has to stem from their idea. And that's the trick. You may clearly know the answer. You have to help them realize it for themselves. You can't tell them.
Right. And that's one thing that I think a lot of other, like outside of our organization here, that a lot of other coaching programs try to do is they say, my solution's the best. Sign up for me. I will get you what you want. Well, your solution worked for you. That doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody else. Everybody has different dreams, different aspirations, different drives, different goals, different personalities that needs to be taken into account here. And that's where I say with this whole picture view that I take on it with the analysis type of look is, let's take all that in and let's paint a picture for you. You can go be your own guru. You don't need another guru to tell you, yeah, wholesale your way to leaving your job. Like, no, you know how many people fail at that? The reason they failed is because that doesn't work for them. It worked for the person that was the guru. So that answer does work. That they're not lying. The guru's not lying with that. It just doesn't work for this other personality.
So I would say that something I've heard time and time again, I heard it plenty this weekend, was success leaves clues, right? And so, yes, we can take things from other people, but we really need to repackage it of our own. We need to put our own emotions in there. We need it to be ours. There's formulas, but if you don't plug your own answers into the formula, you will not get, by no means are you going to get the outcome that somebody else did. You don't have the drive behind it. You don't have the why. And so I think that's a big key. And it sounds like you're hitting on it is digging in and finding out what it is that drives them. Like, what is going to make them get up and do the extra, right?
Absolutely.
If that's their ambition, how are you going to do it? You so far you haven't. You've been talking about it since you're 16 years old, right? And so far you haven't. So how are we gonna make sure that we're not looking back 10 years from now and feeling the same way as you do at this moment? How are we gonna do that? And
one of the examples I like to throw out there is Jeff Bezos, richest guy in the world, right? You can go follow and do everything that Jeff Bezos did, and you may get similar results, and you may get the same results too. What I mean by that is hated by many, is divorced. I mean, like, let's just take that divorce aspect of it. He's the richest guy in the world, but his relationship was still terrible that he ended up in a divorce. I would bet money that almost anybody who sets out on the money of making more or of trying to make more money, that they're not setting out to get divorced.
No.
I don't think that's what they want.
That wasn't their intention. I think I'll make a whole bunch of money and lose my wife and my family.
Right. Why would we want to give that up? We don't.
But that's plenty of people's formula, though. So it's a good point here we're making. Maybe we wouldn't want to follow Jeff Bezos' formula. One of the things, and I think you've said it to me off camera, but you would like to speak on platforms beyond Tony Robbins. So like you have ambitions of impacting a lot of people, man. I mean, that's a guy that everybody knows, and you have ambitions to do more. But frankly, if you followed his exact blueprint too, he also was in a divorce. He also, gave up like $40 million in a divorce. That's a great place to be, to have it, right. But to be reset, like, oh, I made it, but now I just get to give it away. Not in a good, I don't know, maybe you do want to bless your ex-wife, but
I mean, even look at his health. If you follow his entire formula, he was following a certain health recipe
Mm-hmm.
that didn't work for him because he ended up with like probably world record mercury poisoning that
Mm.
he was even in to the point of being in a wheelchair for a while. So you can there's certain formulas that you can follow and you can get some results, but there may be side effects with it.
Hmm. So what do you think about, you could give somebody the formula, you can even then teach them to put their own like elements into it and to feel it. That still doesn't lead to success, right? Because what happens is, we've been learning a lot about this, outside of these interviews, but there's positive and negative streams in the world, right? And so a little setback tends to throw us all the way over into that other stream. So we need that ongoing motivational talk that I feel like can't always just come from inside. We need to bounce it off other people. We need a tribe. We need folks that are like-minded to us, that are going through this with us, they're on the journey with us, and say, hey man, this happened to me today, and man, I'm starting to be way off course here. Am I right to be? What help me here, right? Like, what do I how do I get back on course? And I think that that's the invaluable thing, that having relationships with people that last, that are over time. Not I popped in, I know of you, and we're gonna hang out for 3 days, and it's gonna be a great experience, and then we're gonna go away, and maybe we check in on each other, maybe our relationship's better, but it's not the ongoing loving on somebody and digging in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal the quote we talked about earlier from Tony Robbins. Proximity is power.
Mm.
And that's probably one of the biggest advantages of being in these groups, is you're around these other people who are having these successes, who've been there, who have these other ideas, who are going other places, who have that same mindset, who want to see you succeed, who want your help succeeding, have just all this wealth of greatness to come together and create a different world. But that works in the opposite way as well.
Mm.
That if you choose, because you're making that choice either way, you can choose to join us, or you can choose to stay where you're at. If you stay where you're at, where is that? What happens to prisoners when they get out? So many of them revert. But why is it that they revert? Because they start hanging around with the same negative influences they had before.
Mm.
So if you choose to stay around who you're hanging around with now, if you choose to just keep having these same influences in your life, that same proximity, you're going to still keep going down that same road you're on. But if you change that, if you choose the other way, if you choose to start hanging around us, then you will see different results. You will see that goal come to fruition.
Now, I've heard it put that we tend to live up to the expectations of our peer group, of our circle. And so if our circle has a lot of non-thinkers, lower end people, criminals to your argument, then are we not going to become that as well? I think so.
I can't remember which book it was in, but he talked about twins separated at birth, that one of them goes and becomes super successful, and one of them goes to prison. And
that's actually a story you heard from me. And if I could take the ball here, so it was on Oprah, and it was a story about two twins that were born just 1.5 minutes apart. And what happened is, why it became a story is, now they're adults, and one of them's on death row for the crimes he committed, while the other one is a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And so they go to the guy in prison, right? And he's facing that he's going to walk, what is it, the Green Mile? He's going to the chamber, right? He's going to get electrocuted. He's going to be dead because of what he's done. And so Oprah gets him on the phone. She's like, man, you've been a bad dude in your life, and you're now gonna pay for it. He said, but I got to ask you, how do you think you ended up here? And he said, man, when we were younger, our dad, he was an abuser, an alcoholic, a drug addict, a thief. How would you expect me to turn out? Fast forward, She gets on the next phone call. Other brother, man, you were born just a minute and a half apart from that dude I was just talking to. He said, but you went on and you're a Fortune 500 CEO. You've accomplished all this stuff in your life. I said, how did that come to be? And he said, well, when we were younger, my father, he was an abuser. He used to do drugs and alcohol, and he was a thief. How else would you expect me to turn out? And so the moral of her story, the moral of that interview for me was, man, we all have circumstances, but we could look at it as one guy did as fuel, or another guy did as a crutch. And I think we all want to be better than our last generation. We all want to step up. And some of our parents, not mine, but some of our parents set pretty high standards regarding that. But we still want to, and that's what we want for our kids too. By the way, I forgot to mention, you're a new daddy, right? You got a couple kids. You got now 3, right?
3 girls, yeah.
Yeah, all right. And so there's a new baby around the Thompson household, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How's that going?
Yeah, great. Actually, she just had a checkup today with the doctor. Everything's looking great. She's chubby little cheeks.
Awesome. Those are the best. The chubby little baby cheeks and baby thighs. I mean, just those little wrinkles and ripples. And I got a 2-year-old. She's starting to lose all that now, but that's all right. We won't have to start over, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, that kind of circling back around to that story for a minute, that it's not your genes predisposing you to the life that you're going to have. It's what you do with it, because you can have the same genes in that same environment, but the way you interact with your energy, I'm going to say your energy, but that where that energy is coming from is your mindset that you have about it, is what really determined the outcome in that situation. So getting you to think that you're capable of more than what you are will lead to that energy coming out, and then that will affect your environment, and that will affect your outcome. And just because you think, well, I'm overweight, I have cancer and all those things, like, well, yeah, you keep saying that in that way, that's exactly what's going to happen. So let's change that around. Let's change your mindset. Let's get you to believe in that you're somebody else, and that's exactly what will happen.
I got to ask you, it's making me dig in here on this one, but so what you tell yourself then is important?
A little bit.
Yeah. So at one time that I met you, you had an opinion about affirmations that might have been different than mine. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you tell it.
So, all right. So we were in the retreat room at one time, and everybody kept hammering on me about the affirmations, because I was on a pretty good streak there with savers from the Miracle Morning there for a while. But one aspect that I was kind of leaving out was the affirmations, and I didn't really see how that could actually cause any effect in my life. And Jonathan, he handed me his affirmations even to read, and was like, hey, does this spark anything with you? And I read them out loud, and I'm like, man, it sounds like BS. I'm pretty sure it was the words I said at that point. And so Jonathan kind of took me.
It was my formula, just for the record. While we're on this topic, what's your formula?
It was his affirmations with that. So he took me aside and he said, do you believe in our visions? I said, well, yeah. He's like, do you read your vision every day? And, well, yeah. Do you believe that it works and it brings these things to reality? And yeah. He said, how's that different than an affirmation? And I was like, oh, man. Well, I guess it's not. So at that point, and this is where that analyzer part of me came out, I dug deep into how affirmations work and like kind of the science behind the affirmations, and tell you it works. Like this is real stuff. These affirmations, and so it really changed around my belief about the affirmations, and so I really took to making that a very important part of what it is, and it's gotten some different results out of there that I wouldn't have been able to get otherwise.
Well, being an analyzer and you not agreeing with me at the time in front of a room of folks, man, I'm so glad I got through, because I could say it to these folks that we're going to get to be around again here later in the month. I could say it to them a million times. But a non-believer, somebody who was adamant to stand their ground, coming back and now being the resident expert on why it does work. You dug in, you found out that auto-suggestion is a real big thing in the world, and it works for you, it works against you. It can build your dynasty, it can destroy your dynasty. And you telling an audience from being a non-believer that it's true, I think does a lot more at convincing everyone else that that's the case. And so I know I caught you smirking, and I caught you off, and it wasn't to say that I was right about something at all, man. I don't want to be right. I want to help. I want to have impact. And I think that you found that to be a tool to have impact with, haven't you?
Yeah. And in many ways, like, for instance, here, this was one of the things we were doing recently with the Think and Grow Rich, is my affirmation, so to speak, it involved an aspect of it that was to make just shy of $20,000 a month. Some of you, that's a lot of money. Some of you, it's not, whatever. But there was another number in there for other reasons that was $7,100 a month. And all my plans keep circling around to that. And like every time I kind of thought about the money, like that's what I really needed to do. So that's kind of, even though I was trying to affirm the $20,000 a month, the $7,100 a month is what was really being planned in my mind. And then some work and contracts came through, and I added up the numbers, and it came out to exactly $7,100 a month. So that's kind of the things that manifest when your affirmations, like, they work, but when they present themselves, you got to be very careful and very, very clear about what it is. Another one real quick is when I did quit my job, I had written a vision specifically for quitting my job, and I'd read it every day. I think 2 or 3 times a day. Especially when I'd first get to work in the morning, I'd just leave it in my drawer at work. I'd get there and I'd read it. And one of the lines in there was, I quit my job in admirable fashion. And there's a lot of room for interpretation there, I've learned. Since that. What is an admirable fashion to leave your job?
Like a boat captain comes in and picks you up and takes you away. The admirable, a really cool dressed one.
I mean, my intention behind that was that, all right, I did something cool. I built up some income on the side, and I was able to go in and quit respectfully and no hard feelings with anyone, right? But another admirable fashion is, hey, things take a downturn, you get laid off, and you're no longer in work. So that's the one that ended up coming through, just because I wasn't clear enough. And that's my point with that, is that clarity is paramount to what it is that you want to actually have come out.
I've heard it, an analogy done like this. They said the mind is not so different than the earth. And when you're a farmer and you have different seeds in your hand, the earth, your brain, doesn't really care which seed that you decide to plant. You could decide to plant a seed of a gorgeous oak tree, or you could decide to plant a seed of the worst poison in the world. And you can put both those things in the ground, and frankly, the earth is going to give you back an abundant harvest of both. If you follow the process, you water them, and you do like we do every day. We water them and we grow them and we give them, maybe not love, but attention, right? Maybe we do love sometimes even those negative poisons. Maybe we do, but it doesn't matter. What you plant in there is what's going to grow. Like it's like that. And so you want something positive, you want something great to grow, that's the thing that you need to have a clear picture of, versus the doubts, the challenges, the I'm not enough that the world tends to throw at us. and those will grow as well, just the same. So, well, I got a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap up. And that is, what do you think is right now the biggest gap in the coaching industry? What would you think it is?
I think it's having some sort of one like real accountability system to be able to see, like, transparent, not that, hey, I checked the box kind of thing, but being able to see, like, here's the things that I wanted to be accountable for, and what the results were, what I did, and what was that outcome. I think that's probably one of the biggest. But two is having that connection. So a lot of these other coaching programs you may see out there, they'll call it a coaching program, but they're just kind of talking to their phone. They're not really diving in and trying to help you and trying to tailor make a solution for you to go have that impact. They are kind of more selfish and personal in a way. They're not trying to be of service and be in that service mentality. So I think that's actually something we're very good at here, is tailoring things to you to help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, I think that's it. You get somebody who doesn't care, that's not motivated, that it's not really their vision to make impact. It is their vision to make income. But I've heard it recently put that with the right impact, you get income. It's just, it's inevitable. It's like a rule. So that was kind of interesting. I think you're in line, and I might sum it up if I could, that it's love. Maybe that's the gap, is that missing element, is really truly caring, like caring about somebody, and enough to truly help them.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's different kinds of loves. For those of you who your walls go up when you hear that, I think the Greeks even had the 4 different words for loves, and eros and agape and all that stuff. But if you, it's not going to be your spousal love. It's not going to be your eros type of love, but it's going to be your agape, your friendship love, your brotherly love, that may be able to come from a tougher place at times when you need to hear it.
Sometimes it's going to be tough love, right?
I've seen some of our coaches stand up on a chair and kind of do this a couple of times of, hey, knucklehead, you're not listening. So,
and it was just right for the time. It's just what they needed to hear. Sometimes that's how that person, that student, that client is accustomed to hearing things. That may be the language that was used in their household their whole life. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way you can get through. But you don't know that, and you don't even try it. I met you one time. I think we're spending a weekend together, but I'm gonna tear into you. It doesn't happen. Like, you don't know somebody. You it's hard to help them if you don't know.
Well, so I'll give you an example with me. Early on in the coaching, when I was first trying to get the coaching group off the ground, because there's an aspect of it of that sales, because sales is service, right? That if you have a service that you're trying to get out to the world, you have to be able to sell it from a place of love, because it's that is what is going to serve that person. But if you can't present it in a way where they are able to get it, then you're not doing them your service. You're doing them a disadvantage. And I was struggling with that sales aspect, as most engineers do. A lot of people do. They just ball up when they hear sales and selling and stuff like that. But every salesman in the world is tell you everything's selling, right?
Right.
But where that came in with me, coach said, because you suck at selling, you are now leaving those students out there, and they're wandering around lost, needing help because you suck at selling. And that was the words I needed to hear at the time. That was some tough love of, like, you need to get this figured out so that you can go out and serve more and do more. And
yeah, the selling is actually a service that you're providing. And if you can't help people to know that you have that service by selling them, then you don't get a chance to help them, and you're not serving. So, well, okay. What is it that we haven't discussed that you think might be important for me to know and your audience to know?
About me or about the world?
I mean, if you got a secret, everybody wants to know it, but I was talking about you.
So I would say that sometimes most people that I've seen come into coaching, they come into it with this idea of, I'm going to be able to make more money and that'll go solve my problems. But that almost never works out. And that
You mean
was,
you don't make more money?
well, no, they will make more money. They'll make more money than they ever dreamed about. But it's not until they get some of their other problems out of the way. So when I joined coaching, I thought, all right, I'm joining up with some of these real estate experts. I'm going to get to pick from their brains. I'm going to learn so much about real estate. My real estate business is just going to blow up, make so much money I can go live my life the way I want. But what I uncovered in the coaching was that there was a lot of tension in my relationship, in our marriage. And it wasn't until we worked through a lot of those issues. We had some tough retreats, like pounding on the walls anger retreat. Yeah.
Real growth, I would call it.
Yes. And it was when we had those situations that we had that real growth that opened the door to take that tension down that was actually holding me back from my goals, holding my wife and I back from that true deep intimate marriage that we wanted. And that shows up in many different ways in our lives. So that was for me, and that was our relationship. For some people, that's with a past trauma that they have, or just different impressions they have, or maybe there's some medical issues, or depression issues, or different things like that. There's all kinds of things, but there are these different emotional cues, and this is why I was saying earlier, trying to key into these emotional cues for painting this whole picture, is because when those got out of the way, that's when more things that I thought I was going after were able to happen at that point. They would have never happened had I not gotten the core issues out of the way.
And thank you for, one, being that vulnerable in the room, that you were able to give yourself a breakthrough and help your relationship. But I also want to thank you for being that vulnerable here on the call. It's going to let folks know in what way that you can help them, that you've overcome something that they may be dealing with, or even if you're still working on it, you're ahead of them in the process, and you got some tricks, tactics, some help to them. So, final question I got for you, man, and that is, what are you reading right now? What are you learning? How are you growing?
So, man, so I'm visiting Colorado, visiting my family right now, and I just packed my suitcase full of books. I got my clothes on one half, and the other half is all books, just because I try to dive in and I read. I got my Audible library just full of books. So there's not just one thing that I'm reading, because I've learned my knowledge is just skyrocketed the more that I read. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, I set off to try to read a book a week. And I'd lost count when it was September, and I think I was at like 70 books or something like that.
Leaders are readers, man.
That's right. So, but there's a couple big ones that I'm reading currently. Three main books that I'm reading currently. One, Think and Grow Rich, and we're going through that process. I've read this book multiple times, and we're just going through it again, but in much more depth and detail, slower paced. Let's talk about it. Let's see how this is showing up in our lives. Let's follow the formula. Let's do it. Let's enact it. Let's not just read it and get the knowledge. Let's put it into play. So that's probably the forefront of the books right now. Number two is Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson. There's an aspect of that I'm trying to implement in my life and my business and what I'm trying to grow. And I think there's a wealth of knowledge there that it's going to be able to help accelerate that. And then number three is The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, I believe is his name. which is kind of one of the first books on economics. So I'm really into finance and learning about that sort of stuff. And I think there's a lot of cues into there of kind of some bigger macroeconomic type of ideas that may be able to play into not only my personal financial life and kind of turn into the macro into a micro, but that I think that I can help students out with and change their own financial picture.
Well, Reese, man, thanks for spending this time with me. You know, me and you, we could talk for hours more, but we're going to wrap it up. I would just like to tell you what a blessing it is to know you, to get to work with you, to get to journey with you. And I know we were playing around about who's the best coach in the world and stuff like that, but I'll just tell you, anybody who would ever consider letting this man influence their life, I mean, I'm his coach, and he's been a huge influence on my life. And I just want to tell you, if you're on the fence about it, don't be. Give him a chance. He can make a lot of difference in your trajectory, man. So I thank you, and I look forward to being right along your side and watching you continue to grow, as well as you to continue to grow your spider web, brother.
Thanks, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
You be well, and we'll be talking real soon.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.